We will do something very much like this 2 weeks from tonight, and on the board agenda tonight is a conversation about any other additional opportunities. The board is seems like they're meeting all the time now with the superintendent search and everything going on, so finding a date and a time has been a challenge, to be honest. But thanks for coming out. You have in your hand, you picked up the handout. This was the presentation that Hunt did at the middle school in the cafeteria on Thursday, March 9th. It's the exact same presentation. We'll print more. It's on our website. When you go to our website, on the left side is some stories a little ways down the page, and it's, I think, the second story down, and all the resources are there. And then also I printed off an agenda just sort of to be organized, and it kind of helps guide our thinking through it. And you'll see that there's a survey link at the bottom that really asks what's your preference from all you know, option 1, option 2, or option 1, option 5.05, or option 6. And then there's places for you to ask questions and provide comments to the board, and they will be updated on that. I don't know how often, but the board will see everything that you see there, and then we'll take the frequently asked questions from that and update the frequently asked question document that will be on the website. So I've asked Joe Maglioka, our Director of Facilities and Transportation, to move rather quickly because the March 9th presentation really took about, I'm going to say, 80 to 90 minutes just to go through everything. So I'm assuming you know a little bit about it, and if you don't, please take some time to go to the website. This is all there. And then once we've moved through it, really what I think the board is interested in and what we're interested in is hearing your comments and questions. So with no further ado, I'll have Joe take us through the PowerPoint.
All right, so I got about 15 minutes to go through each of the options. There's 3 options, so if you have questions or you want to stop me if I'm going too fast, just let me know. So option 1 is our option. 3 buildings remain the same.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Could you just maybe back this up and talk a little about the building condition survey, which
Sure.
prompted this, so that there's a little.
Yeah.
context?
So one of the questions that was asked in on social media or something was, well, why are we considering a project? In 2015, Hunt, our architects that are working with us, did a building condition survey. You'll hear that term BCS, Building Condition Survey, Facility Survey. Basically, it's a process where architects and engineers will walk through the buildings, identify building deficiencies, systems that have reached the end of their useful life, so on and so forth. So what they do is they compile all the data in an Excel spreadsheet, and they give us a report that says, this is what's wrong with this building, this is what's wrong with that building, and then they make recommendations based on health and safety, educational programming, so on and so forth. So they gave us the report in 2015. It's a huge binder, and I think that it's posted, correct?
Yes.
The building condition
Yes,
survey.
it's right in that same area of the report. It's
Yeah.
right in that same.
So our building condition survey is posted for all of you to look at it if you have questions or you want to look at all of the information. It's a lot of information because we have a lot of buildings, and it goes through system descriptions and describes what our systems are, and then recommendations for facility upgrades. So that kind of gets us a little bit to where we are right now. In May, I think we started a facility advisory committee. It was made up of community members, staff, and the principals, parents. There wasn't any students, so that facility advisory committee went through a process of vetting what are the options. We have all of these key components or issues with our buildings that have been identified. So what are our options? What do we do with all of those? So this advisory committee kind of went through, created 12 or 13 options, and then they kind of narrowed it down to what's really feasible. So from there, that's where we're kind of at now. They said, here's some feasible options, and they gave that report to the board. So Facility Advisory Committee gives a report to the board, and then the board decides what we're going to do after we get some input from you guys. So that's where we're at right now. Any questions about how this all started and where we're at today?
Joe, can I be honest?
Yeah.
I've been through this so many times. You gotta fly now and then
Right.
do the questions at the end.
Okay.
Because
All right.
otherwise we'll never make it.
Okay, so option one. So this option, grade alignment remains the same. So pre-K 4, 5, 8, and then 9, 12. It's kind of hard to see, and I apologize because for whatever reason this projector doesn't have color, real good color. But basically, if you look at your slides in your hand, you'll probably have a better idea of what's going on here. But in this option, we do some work at STEM Edition here. There's some work at the center of the school for our counseling center. Main office security upgrades, pre-K addition here. They're small additions just to expand the size of the classroom so they meet current SED requirement. SED, State Education Department. And then some smaller renovations back here. That's all part of kind of moving people around and stuff. So pretty good work going on at this school. A lot of health and safety items too, which are identified in additional work. But you know, the core part of this project at the elementary school is the STEM addition. So I went through that really fast. That was really fast. So
In addition to, did you mention 2 pre-K classrooms?
yeah, I mentioned that the addition here, just widening the space to meet current regulations.
So we have clear programmatic needs that have identified the spaces that you intend to improve. In addition to the things that the state requires us to do, because these buildings belong to them.
Correct.
80-something cents on the dollar, right? I mean, what is our total capital, what is our total value of our capital investments? Everything we own, when we do it, it's 150 million, how much is more?
More than that.
It's more than that. So
One of the
85.
numbers this summer was 156.
And so it's important for everybody to understand that the state owns 85%, so we're state taxpayers as well. And so there's stuff that they want done that you have to do if you own stuff, like you do in your house. It's not, that's how, this is, you're gonna go, I'm gonna take you inside my head, it's how I think about this. Then it's the program question, you gotta fix certain stuff, and there's a bare bones thing here, right? The next one is, and then, in addition to that, we look at our program like pre-UPK, and it's bursting at the seams, best I can tell, is what I hear. And that space that we built down there was not necessarily, for whatever reason, as people assess it, is not fitting what we currently have. So we have to make some adjustments to that physical space. So I think it's important, whatever option and space, and we like to mess around where the lines are and who's getting what in there. It's important to keep in mind that you're looking at the end of a pretty long discussion that's programmatically, we started having this discussion 2.5 years ago. We're talking about what a program needs, because we know this is coming, it comes every 5 years, and you're required by law to do it.
Yep.
So the decision for us as a community tonight, from my perspective, is simply, with that in mind, we have made some programming decisions and discussions that drive this thing beyond just the bare bones. Back and forth banter was, I thought, what we were gonna have in that 12 months when we had the consultants about shaping to get it to this. You were speaking at the last meeting. It's not like these things just flew out of thin air. They've been sort of thought about and melded with finances, population models that take us out a little ways so we can predict the spaces that we need. And a lot of the way we learn nowadays is more collaborative. We're trying to teach these kids from a very young age to learn in a collaborative environment. And to do that, you have to have space that's configured a particular way, or you make adjustments and sacrifices to fit in what you got. It's not like we're gonna be a terrible school tomorrow if we don't do anything but the bare minimum. But if we wanna continue to be a community that people wanna spend a fair amount to come in and have houses, there's that end of it, and then the other end, we have to be respectful of the people who don't have a lot of money, and who live hand to mouth and check to check. And that's the framework for the decision, and I don't wanna get lost in these details, because you can't see it. It's doing nothing but frustrating me. I don't know about the rest of the educators here. And the fact that you fly through content, there's things flying around I see on my emails half blown up with all this stuff now. Let's have questions. I don't even think you need to go through this. And does anybody have specific questions on the sizes of the rooms? Yeah, go ahead, John.
So we've heard a lot about STEM program, and you just touched on it now, and how that's really changing the physical needs of our schools.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more about that, to see why a standard traditional classroom size isn't gonna foot the
Who would
bill. I
like
don't
to
know
speak to
why we need to go to the larger
Angie?
spaces.
Somebody got to answer that
I
question.
think John and Josh can speak to that.
Give it a shot.
Do you want to talk about program? Because the space, so the STEM spaces themselves, and I'm not going to talk about their piece of the program, but the STEM spaces are large, flexible spaces. Sometimes they have like a maker space, a clean room, a dirty room, so on and so forth. So these spaces are designed so that they're stretched out and there's lots of light, technology, the indoor air quality, like heat, ventilation, air conditioning, those types of things. They're just designed differently to handle the program piece that goes along with it.
What's the program piece?
So that's you guys. You guys go ahead and speak.
I can jump in about middle school. If you've been catching the free press, there's been a lot of recent stories about what we have as our local VOR program. The local VOR program it's a new program this year at the middle school that we were trying out to meet the needs of some diverse learners. And it's looking at the farm to table process. That we have a lot of students that are getting out into the hoop house that was donated. It's been a community process. What we're finding is that the kids are excited to get out there, grow vegetables, harvest the vegetables. They're coming into the school. They're producing lunches that the staff can buy. We can't sell to students, but we can get staff. They're using those funds to provide an opportunity for the kids to donate to our sister school in Africa. They're also doing a field trip later this year that they're funding down to United Nations in New York City. And so we have students that are actively engaged in researching what types of vegetables they want to grow in their plots, what are the conditions that are required. They're working with the technology teachers to make square foot gardens. They've got a hydroponic garden growing in the classroom for the winter months. They just had some seed starter racks that they got through a grant from the foundation. And that's the type of program that as we move to what we call project-based learning, that become interdisciplinary, where we have the science teacher working with the math teacher, or the social studies teacher, or the technology teacher. And these flexible spaces allow for that group interaction. It can be multiple grade levels. Our local board program covers grades 5, 6, 7, and 8. We're trying to figure out how to allow students who aren't part of the program to still work within the program because they want to be part of it, whether it has some of it too is the advertising. Students will go around and get flyers to the teachers, take orders. They start planning out meal prep early on. So that's something that if we have the STEM space, which would incorporate technology and the art, so it is utilizing STEAM, that they can have the clean room space, which might have computers and Chromebooks or whatever that they can use to plan. They could also start developing things that, one of the challenges early on, they wanted to build a vertical hydroponic garden, but some of the pieces that they need, if we could manufacture them ourselves, might be a little bit better. So if we go towards like a 3D printer type model, they could start working in the clean space, then have the dirty space, the printer. They can work with the art teacher for graphics. So there's a lot of potential, and that's something that we're continuing to grow at the middle school. So that's just one aspect of it.
And it's funny that Josh, was the first one to talk, and I'm sure John could say exactly the same, elaborating for the high school. But I'll tell you, again, in my head, we have a building in the middle school that creates some challenges, it appears, from the data that we're collecting for education first, and then there's needs that it has because of the kind of building that it is, that sort of don't meet with the way this project-based learning idea is going, you know what I mean, John? So the community has to decide how they want to give us input about a decision that, if you're looking at it long-term, from the numbers he shows us, and they're all in the things, I've taken me longer, I'm not good at those, you start talking Excel spreadsheets and I'm somewhere else. For me, I look at those numbers and I say, well, we're gonna spend this money on that building, no matter whether we spend it now and affect the taxes or expend it, over a longer period of time. That's the building we got. It appears by every measure for the next 10 to 15 years, we're gonna be needing these kinds of spaces that we're talking about. We have an opportunity now to make a decision that's gonna be a 10, 15-year deal. So we're glad to see everybody here, but that's the dilemma that we face, regardless of what we do in each building. It's the stuff you gotta get done, and then it's the programs, and then it's the middle school thing, which we might be able to repurpose. That is wrought with all kinds of who's gonna live there, and how much is it worth, and what are we gonna do? That's a whole nother conversation that, I have to tell you, I've been thoroughly impressed with the way everybody's approached this over the last 18 months, sort of publicly and privately. For a couple of years we've been talking about this. So I would like to hear more questions about specific things. He's got slides, he can show you everything he needs to show you, including the tax numbers, which eventually is where we gotta get.
Can I just add, before you,
Yeah, Mike.
because a question got asked and only one school got the answer, and Jean's
Yeah.
not here,
And I
but,
can, I can certainly
Okay,
answer
do
for
you
the
wanna speak to
elementary or
it?
even,
just so you hear all three
even
buildings.
globally, because I think there's a short-term answer to that, and then there'll be a 10-year answer to that, and a 15-year answer to that. So we do have a STEM committee, that's certainly asking those exact same questions. If we have this STEM space, what's the best use of it? We don't want to get into a situation where we have a space and we're not using it programmatically. So our plan is to go out and tour other schools that are using it really well, and not reinvent the wheel and learn from that. So we do have some specific examples
We
from
went
each
out,
building.
you guys went out field
But
trips.
globally, we're gonna continue to look at that. I can speak for the elementary school, continues to be one of 2 elementary schools in the state. Saratoga Springs is the other one that's piloting Project Lead the Way, which is a STEM project-based learning program. One of their big needs is storage for the materials for that, the projects that are made. Project-based learning is a big initiative, so that's the current push at the elementary school. But STEM and STEAM isn't something that's gonna go away.
It's actually already here, as I understand it, when our elementary teachers do a Project Lead the Way unit, there's all these things that come into the classroom. It becomes very enriched with things to build with, make, explore, and just the logistics of putting all those things into, say, a second grade classroom. You come into our classrooms, they're full of things already. They're not that big, and they're just full, that's a very rich environment already. So to have a place where teachers can go there and do the Project Lead the Way units would be, well, very helpful to them, because right now they're just having to fit it in through the nooks and crannies of their classrooms. And I don't know, John, do you want to just quickly add to that, what could happen?
Basically a lot of the same things that Josh said, but also at the high school level, we're really trying to create that makerspace that is preparing kids for the college. Makerspaces, if you've been on a college campus lately into an engineering school, what you see is a makerspace, and it is equipped with 3D printers, mills, plasma cutters. It's all of these big machines that are computer controlled, having kids design and build things, doing the materials processing right here on our campus, so that they're getting the skills that they will be using in engineering programs or science programs or
Art
just
programs.
Art programs. It's all connected.
When it comes back around, I have a question.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the answer to that.
Ask our robotics.
Yeah, throw robotics in
We're
there.
gonna robotics guys over here.
They're flying these things for sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, pardon if I'm being daft, because I wasn't at the March 9th meeting, but just 2 quick questions. Is there enough room to build the middle school between the other 2 schools without it being really squeezed later, like 25 years down the line? And why does the middle school need to be rebuilt? Because I'm unaware of that.
I think you need to take that question.
Do you want to skip to the,
I would just say, yes,
Okay.
there's room, and then talk about why.
so, we have a basic concept. that has addressed moving all of the spaces that are over there to space or a building that connects the two buildings. So one of the things that we went through with the advisory committee was not reducing any space or classrooms. We went through a whole process of vetting out sharing of spaces, so we've got the current concept to a point where there's really only a few shared spaces. So, yeah, what we're gaining out of that is the efficiency. So you don't have stairwell, we're gonna have a ramp just because of the elevation change, but you don't have a lot of wasted space in stairwells. Your circulation space, your corridor circulation space is way down. The numbers of bathrooms is way down. You don't have to have them on each floor. So by doing that, we're taking all of the core space, the classroom space, the gym space, that type of stuff. We're moving it over here. We're putting it, you know, kind of in between the two buildings, and we're basically just moving all of that programming, those kids just over here, and it's a smaller footprint. So we're gaining efficiencies by reducing our footprint size. So, what was your second question?
Well, then that brings up, do the elementary school kids interact with the middle school kids, and do middle school kids want to be around elementary school kids?
So,
Wait, that's not for you.
oh, okay.
I don't think that's for you.
Well, we've talked about it. It was a big thing. And, well, let me see if I can answer it, and then we'll just pass it
If
around.
you look at the color-coded picture, I think.
But I know, yeah, you have to look at, that's a wiped out, I can't believe how wiped out that is, so there's
But
no
this
color.
exact
Yeah,
slide
yeah.
is in the packet,
Fine,
color-coded.
yeah,
to
fine.
read.
So this came up at the other meeting,
Find
is
page
the
seven.
interaction of ages and is it
Yeah.
maturity appropriate?
They still remain very separate.
They're very separate,
But there
but
are
if,
some
but
shared
it does
things
open
like-
up the possibilities for students to
relevant.
accelerate from elementary to middle school and middle school to high school. And we
So
just
you
had a
maybe
long
take one
conversation
school.
today about teachers who have to travel in our district and how that just doesn't make sense sometimes, and it's a crazy maker for the schedule, for somebody to go from the high school to the middle school or back and forth during the day. So it does open that up if they're next to each other. It's on page 7, I think, the color page.
So
That.
just one point, which we really can't see by the projection. Where the spaces start and stop, in the concept, it doesn't appear that there's a separation. But in reality, typically what happens, much like a Watkins Glen or Alfred Allman that's way out in Alfred, where those two intersect, there's usually a door that stops, you know, that crossover, so to speak. With the elementary school and the middle school, I mean, there's this corner, it hasn't been really designed yet, right, because it's conceptual. But this corner, there's gonna be some stuff going on in this corner that's gonna prevent, you know, kids from, you know, let's say middle school kids from coming down and doing this or coming down and doing that. So there is some
And the
level of
security
prevention.
system will help us with that too.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah, that new
exactly. Right
system.
here, where the middle school stops and the high school starts, there's already a set of doors there. Those doors will be locked, right? And depending on egress and code requirements, whether or not it'll be locked on both sides or not, we'll figure that out. The library concept for the middle school that's kind of right here in this plan, again, walls, doors, so there's a pretty good separation to address some of those concerns that were brought up a long time ago, you know, maybe as far back as May. So some of the initial conversations were preventing that overlap or that crossover. So we think we've got a pretty good plan to eliminate.
I was looking, I couldn't find it on there, the cafeteria space. Is there an additional cafeteria space on that plan?
Yeah, so right here, there's a large space
Okay,
in this concept that would
gotcha,
be
thank you.
the middle school cafeteria. This guy in the back with the,
So
Right.
you started this out with your efficiency, as far as like your building cost, running cost, everything like that, right? Was that what you're headed for?
I think that this option provides opportunity for efficiency gains.
Okay. we got square footage that's already existing, correct? For the middle school.
Yep.
We're looking to spend a lot of money on a new building, correct?
Yep.
As far as efficiency goes, are we talking like teaching efficiency, or are we talking energy efficiency? Where are we going?
I think both. I
Okay,
think that there's opportunity for gains with both.
there,
Well, the big thing, right, the state classroom size has changed, right? That's one of the things, for example.
no, that's fine.
Those
I'm
sorts
just,
of things
I'm
have
just
changed.
more relating to space cost to build compared to renovate.
Yep, you're absolutely
And
right.
Exactly right.
update everything.
Right.
Obviously, the middle school needs a lot of updates, but really, when you talk about building a new space compared to renovating and updating systems, your cost payoff, where are we at? Like, how
So,
many year payoff are we gonna get when we build a new space
so
compared
that,
to renovating a space, and is it gonna be worth it, and is it gonna be beneficial to our tax dollars in order to do this?
And do we outgrow that space?
Are you
at some
understanding what I'm asking? Like,
Yes,
Even including like teachers' efficiency, building efficiency, like cost efficiency of a building operating, like we're still spending a lot of money on building new space, like
Correct.
it's price per foot
yep,
compared to renovation per foot is totally like way less. You're
yeah, there's a
talking
lot, there's a huge
like
difference.
10%.
Or more, yeah.
Or-
Yeah, I mean,
or
when
less.
I worked at Hunt, before I started this job, we used to figure, $320 per square foot for new space, and then like $180 to $220 for renovated cost per square foot. So yeah, it's a huge difference. But if you flip to the, and this is just a graph, because it's easier to see than the spreadsheet that has numbers all over the place. But if you look at your long-term potential facilities investment, option one is somewhere in the 94 million plus range over, I think it was 15 years is what I got, yeah, from about 2016 to 2032. You're looking at 94, option 5 drops into the mid-80s, and then option 6, which is kind of our option that is really just the things that the state requires, and then us adding space for STEM is, somewhere a little 81.3. So to answer your question, yeah, there is difference. So the difference is, if you look at this 5-year range, is our upfront costs for option 5 are much greater than either of the other two options. But our long-term investment is much lower over that same 15-year period.
I'm gonna get over the problem with this graph. The bottom end of the graph is not there. The 60 some odd million below that they all have.
Right.
Right, so that looks like, ooh, it's twice. It's not. It's 10%
No,
or more.
no. Yeah,
It's about a 10% increase between the first and the second.
Yeah, it's $8 million. That's the difference.
8 million, yeah, so
Yeah.
because don't.
It's not half the cost is what he's
No,
saying.
no, be careful.
Right. No, and that's not the point.
Included in this question, I'm gonna expand on his question. What's the liability associated with not using, this may be hashed already, what's the liability associated with either removing or reusing or letting loose of the middle school?
The liability,
Does it have asbestos?
there's a little bit of asbestos. It's actually very good. It's a very good building.
Okay,
Um,
so what's the liability to carry it? Or let
To
go?
carry it is just costs, right? I mean, really, you're talking about, if we went with an option where the middle school was closed, you're talking about carrying the cost of the facility.
Are you including in these projections the salvage value at all?
No,
So there's no salvage value calculated in this at all?
no.
Well, whenever we've asked, no one would give us a number. I mean, I've heard, I said this was crazy at the last, I said, call me crazy, whatever, 400,000 is probably about it.
Okay, so
Don't
you're
get
taking-
much.
You're taking a $400,000 property that you're gonna put $30 million into it. And you're saying it's $30 million or $45 million to build a new one that's that does the same effective function for 300 kids?
Well, yeah, and we could get in a conversation about the benefits over each option.
No, and that's not what I just want to make sure that the risk associated with each option is accurately represented in the numbers that you present.
Yeah,
So,
I think so. I mean, I didn't take into consideration any monetary gain from selling the building or just leaving it there, or, I mean, and to be honest with you, I'm happy to do any of the 3 projects. I just want us to do a project, because I don't want us to get into a situation where it's critical failure and we have to react, you know, we have to be reactive rather than proactive,
you don't
so.
want to pay for speed.
Right, right. So, I mean, when it comes to what option do I want, I'm happy with any of the 3. You know, and these costs, there's no hidden agenda here. I just put together numbers. The board asked me, what are the long-term costs look like?
This is not
Yeah.
about you, this is about understanding the numbers better.
Yeah.
Because you've spent 2 years on this, and you're well entrenched in it, and not everybody here has got that same level of understanding.
So, more questions?
We have more questions here.
I have a question about following from his question, and I wondered this at the last meeting also. So if you look at the last column, so for me personally, I am looking at option 1 versus 5. I'm not really even considering 6 because I think we need to do more than just the bare bones to enhance our programs. So when I look at those 2, my personal slant is towards 1. I will say that because I like keeping the middle school. But it looks like option 1 is $8 million more than option 5, about $8 million more in the long run. But to do option 1 versus option 5, it's about $8 million difference. So isn't it the same in the end? We're either going to spend $8 million more up front to do option 5, or spend that same $8 million over the long run to do option 1. So I don't understand how it's not the same.
Well, because in this number here, we're basically paying to close the school, right? Because we have to build a new school. So when you start to compound that over the course of 15 years, you see reduced investment here, because 1, we've got a brand new middle school versus a middle school that's old. Here, if we're looking at option 1, I think we're spending $8 million or so on the middle school in option 1. And then we've got more expense here in the next 5 years, and then more expense here in the following 5 years. So, because that school doesn't close. When we go from here to here in the next BCS cycle is kind of how I was breaking it out. You don't have any middle school costs here. It's primarily going to be your elementary school and your high school systems that are kind of coming offline at that point. So yeah, it's an $8 million difference in the first 5 years of the project because of the initial investment. But when you look out 15 years, it is less. Because in option 1 and option 6, we're still spending money on the middle school. And with a brand new building, I'm hoping I can get 10 years out of some of my systems and then 20 years or more out of other systems. So, you know, the next BCS cycle, I don't intend that we would be spending money on the middle school. Unless, I heard somebody over here mention, you know, is it sized so that if our enrollment goes up? Well, if our enrollment went up, then we would probably have to be reactive. But all the projections that the consultants have shared with us have shown enrollment going down or flattening over the next 10 or so years. Does that answer your question? That was long-winded, I apologize. Did it?
That answered my question. I was concerned about enrollment.
Enrollment?
You're talking about space and enrollment. I thought the numbers were down, or like you said, flattening out.
Yeah, I mean, our consultant
Families are
shows that,
smaller.
that's what the consultant showed, that it was flattening.
So you still need more space, the numbers declining?
Do we need more space? I think that the additions that we're proposing are programmatic needs. Not because our schools are too small for, it's purely programmatic. Correct me if I'm wrong, everyone.
It's not population
Is there a
based, it's
staff
program based.
consensus on which option they prefer? And is it the
Well, they
same
said
from
something
each of the
about
three
the
buildings?
elementary class.
I've heard feedback from people, but I haven't looked at any data. I don't think we polled staff or
Teachers were
surveyed.
involved in that conversation.
They were involved, we haven't pulled them since, really, we came up with option 5.05, because we built 5.05 based on the middle school input to a great degree, and we have not gone back to them. We
So will that
have some
happen?
surveys going out though right
Okay.
now.
But just so you know, right, the program needs that we keep talking about don't come from the administration, they come from the building leaders who filter it in a conversation. Please tell me that's how it happens.
How it happens.
Yeah, great.
And in
And then that emerges as our needs, so there's input in the beginning, and I believe, again, this woman who was at the meeting the other night said the teachers were involved in the discussion, and that with
Yeah, there were
the
definitely
consultants.
teachers on the facilities committee.
So there, we
But
certainly
is there a
have input.
consensus? Probably, I mean, I think it's too early to say.
Yeah, we haven't
There's a
asked.
teacher
Yeah, we haven't
consensus.
asked.
Yeah.
But we will.
know, yeah.
I just want to say, can I, coming up with what Leslie was saying, if we are really looking at the same cost, in the long term, I think given like we talked about the ease of teachers and staff being able to flow through the buildings, but I think separation of the three schools is important. But with the 5.05 option, I think in terms of like socially and culturally, we also have to think about multi-age, students working together.
Yep.
Would it provide more support for high school students to mentor elementary and middle school? And I just think like culturally, there could be a real benefit in having the three schools connected.
Is there any potential to repurpose the middle school? Like, you've seen other small towns where the former multi-story school is now an apartment building.
Yeah, at the March 9th meeting, Joe Bose from Ithaca Housing.
Neighborhood Housing Services.
Ithaca Neighborhoods, he did a quick presentation on a potential repurpose of that school. So there very much is potential to continue to use that building.
So my question, no, I'm good. So my question is about the middle school. I agree. I think personally, I would like to see the middle school stay as a school because I think it carries a lot of tradition and things like that. It's been around forever. It's kind of like a hallmark of our school system being that it's been there forever. So I'm on the side of keeping the building, and I know that it's maintenance heavy, obviously, versus building new, where you can get a longer longevity out of the new building. But and you guys have been doing all this. This is your final. You went through a whole slew of ideas and you boiled it all down to these, what you believe is the best idea. In any of that, I live and work in a building that's failing. And the county's been band-aiding the jail for years and years. But it's actually gotten to a point now where we walk in the jail and we look around and go, we put a lot of money in this place. Solars and new gyms and all this other stuff. So it's actually the structure, the framework of the building, which was always strong. It was the additions and all the ancillary things that were failing have now been fixed. And I feel like we've kind of gotten there with the middle school. I remember the dungeon, gymnasium, and all that stuff. So we're there, and if we could fix that, in one of your options that was originally put out by Hunt or by one of you on your own, was there ever, going back to what Josh Huntley said about collaboration, was there ever a talk about building a separate entity building just for STEM, where everybody would collaboratively go, okay, well, we have our STEM stuff, go to building G out there in the back where everybody shares one STEM building, and none of the other schools really have to go through major renovations except for the necessary repairs to the middle school.
We did.
Was that an option? I'm just throwing it out there as an option.
We didn't talk about that.
How many options did we start with?
I thought there was like,
There was
I thought there was
12
more
at
than
one
that,
point.
15 or something.
I look at
We had
stuff
some
like
crazy
this, I look at stuff like this.
Committee.
The joining of the three schools, I have a lot of the same concerns that other people have talked about. Kids being able to interact with each other. There's positives to that and there's negatives to that. Teachers flow back and forth. I work in law enforcement. I see that as a 100% security nightmare. I know you've been really crazy over the last 5 years working on security for all three schools, but from my standpoint, that is a nightmare to protect. Right now, we have 3 separate schools. Any type of incident management response if the middle school is having an issue, the other schools can be locked down and it's a dead deal. They're kind of secure in that way. I look at that and I kind of get a little nervous when you have everybody together in one place. And that's why I think a STEM building all to its own, which is another separate secure building, would have a benefit. So just an idea, I don't know. Like I said, you guys have been crunching numbers and stuff for a long time, and I want to just step in with some, you know.
They do.
Am I right? You
Say
can
again?
lock down in between,
Yes.
you can shut off, you have to have that for fire code, right?
Yes.
You shut off in between each building and you can lock out so the high schoolers can't get over to the elementary schoolers without somebody know, I mean, it has to be unlocked, am I right?
You're talking about the separation
The
between
separation between the three buildings.
If they were all
depends on egress, okay? If we have the egress set up right, it would not have to be unlocked, but we would certainly put a badge or card reader so that staff could move about freely. Or in the incident where we would need a high schooler to go to the elementary school to work with kids, we would provide some provisions to allow them to travel back.
And this is conceptual, right? We're
This
still
is
talking
conceptual. This is
We're not-
conceptual.
I think your point is a valid one,
Yeah.
and one that we could fix maybe by saying, well, instead of having two things that go into two places, the two things go to one hub, and that's where whatever has to be. Sounds like it's a tough balance between benefits you might get from the cultural interaction and challenges there, and then safety issues. This is, but I think it's important, these are conceptual sort of ideas.
Yeah.
We just gotta get a sense what you wanna vote on, because we can't get you something to vote on unless we pay an architect to draw something up. That's just the way this works. I wish we could tell you. I wish Peter Cook was here. He could lament about the fees of design fees and what we pay there, but Peter's not, so.
Hey, Joe,
Yes.
what is the baseline cost for bringing everything up to state mandated size classrooms and all that kind of stuff? Is there a bottom line number of that?
Yeah, that looks very much like option 6.
Okay.
You want to just flip to the financial piece of that, Michael?
Well,
There you go. So what this $16 million includes is additions. So if we were to take the additions out, you're somewhere, I think we talked about maybe 11 million for health and safety stuff, not including educational programming. So that would be primarily spent at the middle school, because a lot of this project is nuts and bolts stuff that you guys don't typically see.
So basically, we're gonna have to spend 16 million on something regardless, correct? Because as Frank, you said, the state owns 80-some%.
Yeah, this also has some STEM improvements as
Yeah,
well.
this has STEM in it.
So if you took that out, what would it be?
It'd be somewhere in that 10, 11, 12.
10,
I'm all for STEM, believe me, I need a bigger state, so.
I think it sounds like 12 million we have to do because the building condition survey says we gotta do it.
Yeah, I don't think the state's gonna force you to spend a dime of taxes, but as Joe said, if we go into the reactive mode and we, just get into the winter and have a boiler go down and not have a backup, and then we'll say like, wow, we wish we'd done something about that. Or the whole middle school Univet system, as you tell me, is
Yeah,
pretty
the
on
middle
its
school
last
is-
legs.
Yeah, it's about $5 million to replace the middle school heating plant.
I think that it's important to note that that 16 million or 11, if we just do the bare bones, is to take care of the number one priorities for this 5-year segment in the building survey condition. The 2s and the 3s, which are lesser priorities now, in 5 years are going to become 1s. So in 5 years, there's little doubt that we'll be coming back to the community to say we need at least another 11 or 16 million. And 5 years after that, we're going to come back and say we need another 15, 16, 17 million, because those current threes on the building condition surveys are going to be 1s, and they are maintenance type things. So,
And that's where that 85 million, 93 million, that's where those numbers came from, was exactly what Gary said. In the next BCS cycle, I added our priority 2s now, and then I added what I would say in 5 years will be priority 1s, which are building systems that I know that are gonna go offline. So Gary is absolutely right.
I think that some people might be more willing to support the new build if we knew what was going to happen to the old building. I think there's a valid concern that this big building overlooks our elementary school playground.
Yeah.
So, I don't have little kids anymore, but I love a lot of the kids in this community, right? And a lot of people know that I love all your kids. But I don't want Joe Schmo living in the middle school while my we now have 4-year-olds in this school, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds are out in that playground playing. Because guess what? Kids get left on the playground. Happened to me. Right, Carolyn? You know, like, kids get left on the playground.
Was that just last year, or was that?
But it happens, you know, like, that's one of my biggest concerns is what's happening to that building.
Well-
If we keep it, we still have to pay to maintain it.
Sure.
So we're still paying something to maintain that building.
Well, but that doesn't mean it can't be a revenue source, potentially.
Yeah, but a
Well,
revenue source too.
It's unfortunate because the presentation from Ithaca Neighborhood Housing, which addresses that issue, and I have to say that I had very similar concerns. And actually, without a lot of background knowledge on what Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Services do, I had concerns when the word Ithaca and housing popped up together to suddenly sit in my backyard. But they've run Juniper Manor for the last 35 years. So they own that property and run that. They own and run Juniper Manor 2. And they have actually approached us about our building in a very preliminary way, long before we were even talking about this option publicly. So there's a great deal of interest from their perspective, and I think from some other entities. But we would be able to have control over how that building is developed. So if we wanted it to be all senior citizen housing, then that's how we could.
So do we still own it and we rent it to
No,
them,
we
or
would
sell it?
we
So that
would
it wouldn't be
sell
our
it.
Because they
expense
have to
anymore.
renovate it.
And
Someone's
then
gonna have
that
to put
would
that
be-
money in there.
Right.
Then taxable property for the school district.
And in the,
What was their preliminary value that they gave you, they paid for that building?
they wouldn't say.
They wouldn't say.
They-
Mr. McGuire is correct. We've
Well,
asked 3 or 4 different people or companies and entities. No one is willing to
Well-
say,
And it depends on what they want to do with it too. I mean, if they have to turn it into a certain level of housing, that's a whole different price point than other kinds of uses, a mixed use. So they just can't say until they get in and talk to our community and say, what do you want to have in here?
Their presentation is also on the website.
yeah.
Their presentation,
And in that presentation, right, Elaine, I think there's the vetting
Yes.
that they do for the people that live there, and there's 5 or 6 points along the way where they, you know, if they're not satisfied, you're not involved. And I think they have a demand right now.
Yes.
Aren't there a bit
Yes.
of a shortage for demand?
there's
Yes.
a shortage in housing right now. Okay,
I just wanted to talk just really briefly, I'm on the STEM committee that Angela referred to. And I did want to present to the board as well as to the community that even if we build these new spaces for our students, particularly the STEM spaces, it doesn't mean they'll be utilized appropriately or the resources leveraged as well as we might hope if we don't have an educator or 2 or 3 in place to facilitate the type of learning that we want to see. So I think at this point, the assumption is that the teachers would just go and use that space and then they would leave and go back to their regular classrooms, at least in the elementary and the middle school. And I do want to raise it to the board that that's a very big concern, that if we're going to invest the money in this resource, this space, that we need to use it really well. And that would mean in the future, potentially, hiring new educators for that space.
I think we're starting to move in that direction a little bit with the hires. I see heads nodding.
Great.
I certainly think that's what we have been trying to do, and I also think that's why the programmatic needs came up, because my sense is teachers were sort of pushing, boy, it'd be nice to do this, it'd be nice to do that. And we have the new career counselor as well, that I believe is probably going to help utilize this space, maybe with people coming in and working in there as well.
One of the points that the folks from Hunt stressed to us is that if we're working on a facility that is a STEM facility, they want to see support for that in the form of resources, otherwise staff. You know, if the community votes to support a program and we put together a plan and it gets sent off to the state ed department, they have to approve it. And in order for them to approve STEM space, they're going to say, well, who's gonna use it, how's it gonna get used? And we have to be able to articulate a plan. And so that's where the conversation needs to lead to, as part of this, an investment in staffing.
And I have one more question, I'm sorry, can I ask it? It's more of, Karen Moon presented, and she's your financial advisor, our financial advisor. So of the three options, she presented how much it would cost per $100,000 value of household.
Michael?
And I think that's a number, since we were sort of, we weren't really comparing apples to oranges or apples to apples, whatever. So this is an important slide to review as
It's the
well.
very last page of the.
So, just so you can see, this is option
You can't see
one.
him.
Yeah.
I can't see it up right next to you. Now we can see it.
Just a second, just a second.
It's the last page of the.
Yeah, that's probably too big, but.
I think this is good.
Okay,
There you go.
Laura, let me know when you think
So
you've seen
yellow
what you answered.
is
Yeah, I think you need to
option
scroll
one.
down a little bit, or
I
up.
think we're at the bottom.
Yeah, but you need to go,
One more frame down.
yeah,
Right
there,
there. Slide it over so we can see
Okay.
that. Thanks.
there you go. That's it.
So you would ask now, I'm sorry, now that we're all looking. Go ahead.
Well, it's just that it sounds like these are per $100,000 value of your home, this is how much you would anticipate paying, and that's a bottom number for plan, 1.05.
Yeah, this is one.
Yeah.
This
And,
is five.
and the main difference being that aid for renovation from the state is significantly different than aid for addition. So that's why those numbers are quite different for your taxpayer. So, I mean, I'm not the expert to talk to that, I was just merely bringing up that presentation did shed some light on what it would cost members of this community for each one of the options.
And the other thing, so does everybody got a clear understanding, just?
And how far out does that go?
Yeah.
Forever, for
Right here.
25 years?
So, option one is based on a 15-year bond. Option 5 is based on 20 years, because the state will aid you, or they set up the payback period longer because it's a new bill. And then option 6 is set up 20 years, and I have to ask Karen why option 6 is 20. That could be a typo, I'm not sure, but this is that kind of, is everybody, so what that means is the tax impact average over the course of the bond, or the length of the bond, for option 1 is 4.8, option 5 is 9.6, and then for option 6 is 0.14. And these are projected numbers, right? Because we have
Over that 15 to 20
over
years.
that 15 to 20 years, because we haven't decided on scope. So as we decide on scope, or basically the board with your input says we're going with option whatever, there's further scope refinement that will happen after, because we start playing with square foot and we start design process. I mean, some of this stuff could change slightly. So that's why it's basically a projected impact, so.
We've asked Karen Moon for more detail, so that'll be coming later this week.
Yeah,
To
just
try
to
to,
get a closer
to just
look.
try to give you more detail, because when the consultants were working with this, it looked like the taxes dropped for about the next 3 years, for one reason or another, and then these would come onto the tax rolls, but then even then, after about 3 years, it starts to drop again. There's just a whole bunch of factors at play. It's not the same every year.
And the other thing.
But over
is-
15 years, one of them's gonna cost us 4.8%. One of them's gonna cost us 9.6, and one of us barely, the state.
Yeah, I think relatively that's what it's looking at.
Yeah, in this ballpark. The other thing is if there's overwhelming response, we might change scope a little bit. So say option 1, and the voters are, whoa, no way, we can't do that. We can refine scope a little bit to try and knock that down a little bit. And that's something that I've just kind of been sharing with. It's like, well, there are things that we can do and get creative to address this number. So where we're at in the process right now, that's the picture of what that would look like. But I think that we still have some massaging that we can do to help the taxpayers and then help with some of these numbers too.
What would be the easiest way for the taxpayers to see the difference between the yellow column and the blue column? If they wanted to go leave this meeting and say, I wanna, really, both of those are keeping 3 buildings, where in the website do they look to kind of see what the
It's all,
different scope would
that-
be? This one includes the STEM room, this one doesn't, this one makes the UPK rooms bigger, this one doesn't. Like, what's the easiest list to see?
I don't think we have it broken down exactly like that. So we'll continue to put more information on the website. This is all on the website now. I don't know what you want to do, Jane. You want to take a couple more questions and then take a 5-minute break and then start the board meeting? And then, as I said at the very beginning, before some of you arrived, we're going to do this exact same thing 2 weeks from right now at 6 p.m. And there may be an additional time, the board's gonna talk about it as part of their meeting tonight, about an additional time. I just don't know when they're gonna get it in, but right now, we're scheduled to do something on Monday, April 3rd at 6 p.m. So there will be that time, and then April 10th, which is another board meeting, this is like topic A on that agenda. So there is more time for input, and then we'll have the survey on the site, etc.
So just one last question, To answer that question, I'm gonna say it, and you tell me if I'm wrong. Over a 15-year period, if I have a $400,000 house, over a 15-year period, 15 years, not every year, every year? That 67 is every year?
It does.
But over a 15-year period, it's gonna cost me 4 times 67.
Per year.
Per year.
The bottom number.
The bottom number, with no star, the other 2 numbers. are
Just for
with
the
me.
building, not for additional teachers, not for
No,
additional
that's
insurance.
right, because we've got other issues with
Right.
Not
operational
additional
maintenance.
projects between 15 and 20 more years either.
Right.
You're gonna have other projects.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right.
Technology changes all the time.
But it's that amount of money.
Yeah.
It's that amount of money.
Yeah.
Are you gonna take 2 more questions?
Okay, we just
So-
have
so
one or
one-
two
just
more
one-
questions
just one more
because we
second.
do have to move
Everybody
on to the
hand up
board
for a
meeting.
little bit. Just one more question. It relates a little bit to liability. Dawson Middle School, what's a fire replacement cost for that building?
Silky and Paul had a number. If the building burned down, what the
Building
value
burns down,
is?
what's the value of it?
I thought it was $56 million, that's what I remember.
And we're looking to sell it for 400,000?
I am only just telling you what I've heard, every time I've heard about a building being sold by a district
Yeah,
for
we
whatever
don't get
reason.
Any value.
Because whoever comes in is gonna have to put, all those millions we'll have to put into it, they'll have to put into it.
Understood.
Yeah.
But it's making the point of that's a replacement value, it's just damage to the ground.
That, I remember one of the proposals was to build a separate new middle school and it was $56 million. Okay, so.
Okay, any other questions that we can answer about it quickly? If not, then what we're going to do is we're going to take about 5 minutes so we get the next agenda out and some more chairs down. So thank you all.